What's going on, everybody? It's Nick here. I just wanted to do a quick tutorial on how to start making beats. This will not be a tutorial on how to work a digital audio workstation, whether that be Logic, GarageBand, Ableton, your phone, but more so on once you have that workstation, how you can utilize the sounds within it to start making beats. So I hope you enjoy. Let's get into it. All right, so here I am in my digital audio workstation. I use Logic. You can use whatever you want, GarageBand, Fruity Loops, Ableton. These concepts that I'm about to show you can apply to any of those. So our basic three sounds in order to get us started to making beats, we want to have some type of main melody, some type of main sound. We need to have drums, and then we need to have a bass. So let's start with the main melody. In this case, I played some type of synth, just kind of a main type of sound. It could be a synth, it could be a piano. Sometimes it can be a sample, which I'll show here in a second. So here's what I played. Yeah, so that's my main melody that I just played. Now let's talk about throwing in the drums now. So drums, there's basically three sounds within our drums that are going to be our basic building block drum sounds. We're going to have our kick, which is down here. That's the low sound. Sounds like this. We have our snare, which is right there, which sounds like this. In hip-hop music, sometimes it can be a hand clap. And then we have our hi-hat, which is right there. And that sounds like this. So when we put those three together, that's our full drum sound. So let me show you a basic pattern then that we can add over top of our main melody. So our hi-hats here, I put them on the down beat. Every single beat. Beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, beat 4 of every measure. So with my main synth sound, we have this. Cool, now let's throw in the snare. So the snare I put on beat 3, as you can see right there. There's my hi-hat and then my snare on beat 3. And when we put those together, it sounds like this. Now let's throw in the kick. The kick, for a basic pattern, all I'm doing is putting on a beat 1 of every measure on that downbeat. And we combine all of that simple pattern together with my main melody. I have this now. So that's a great, just basic drum pattern to start with. Now, once we have our main melody in our drums, then I'm going to throw in my bass, which is kind of going to act as the glue. And a bass can either be like a bass guitar, it can be a synth bass, sometimes it can be an 808. A lot of times in hip hop it's an 808, which is a particular type of low synth bass sound. And I made my own. So here's what my bass melody sounds like. So that's going to act as my low end, and that's going to glue everything together. So here's now with my bass, my melody, and my drums. So we don't have to start with any particular one. Sometimes we can start with the bass when we're designing this. Sometimes some people start with the drums. There's no right or wrong order in order to do this. But as long as you kind of stick to having those three basic sounds, having your melody, drums, kick, snare, hi-hat, and then a bass sound, you're going to be off to a great start. So here's kind of that same thing now, and I used that basic drum pattern, but I kind of expanded on it a little bit. Now it would sound like this. Yeah, and that sounds pretty cool. So let's talk now about if our main melody is a sample, something that you could pull from a CD, a record. Sometimes I pull from records. It could be from something that you just find online. Here's something that I found online. Yeah, so there's a lot of things going on in that sample. There's a piano sound, a vocal sound, and a bass sound. This particular sample takes care of two of our main three building blocks. It takes care of the melody, which is kind of the vocal and the piano, and it also takes care of our bass because there's a bass guitar already in there. So all I have to do now is add drums, my kick, snare, and hi-hat. So the hi-hat pattern that I did is the same on this one. I put it on every downbeat, be 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's going to sound like this with my sample. On this particular pattern, it's a little bit different than my first one. I just wanted to show kind of two basic drum patterns. This time I put the snare on beats 2 and beat 4. And now that with the hi-hat sounds like this. Cool. With my snare being on 2 and 4 then, like I said before, we don't want to put the kick on the same beats as the snare. So I put my kick on beats 1 and beat 3. So kick on 1 and 3, snare on 2 and 4. And now that sounds like this. So that's a slight variation. It's another basic fundamental drum pattern that you can do. And that this time now having my main melody taken care of with a sample and the bass as well in that sample as well. So here's then a little bit of a complex pattern just built off of what I just did with my drums. So here's what it would sound like. So having those three things, main melody, some type of main sound, a bass sound, and then your drums, kick, snare, hi-hat, it's going to get you a long way in starting to make beats. So as long as you got those three, you're off to a great start.